Women Lead, a production of the Women of Color Empowerment Institute. We are your hosts. I'm Bernadette Norris Weeks.
I'm Michelle Austin Pammies.
And I'm Kathy Eggleston. Today, our show is about the extraordinary artist, Hazel Scott, one of the 20th century's leading Black women in the arts, an extraordinary concert pianist, jazz pianist, singer, Hollywood icon who traveled overseas and was the toast of France. So many things about the legendary Hazel Scott. So many things, ladies, that our community doesn't know because of the disappearance of Miss Scott.
That's right, and we had the fabulous opportunity to bring not only the director, but the son of Hazel Scott and Adam Clayton Powell to our area and highlight the film, the disappearance of Hazel Scott, and there are so many reasons why she disappeared, right, Michelle?
Yes, because Hazel Scott was a star, but really a superstar. She was the Black woman in her time who was getting paid like the white women artists.
She was in the 1940s.
Yes, and she was commanding benefits, not just for herself, but she was also saying other Black artists who were with her had to be treated better.
That's right.
Or dressed better. And it was just about Miss Scott. She had that kind of influence and power until
the Red Scare, and she got blacklisted. And she was called to Congress, and she was basically, because she stood up for justice, had her career put on the line and ended up having to go to Europe in order to still maintain some semblance of having, of being able to care for herself and her family.
Well, and I want our audience to know that we're talking about a woman who was born in the 1920s and was a star in the late 1930s as just a late teenager, and 1940s. She was the first Black woman in America to have her own television show. Did you know that?
Did you know that? Wow. Well, Hazel Scott, I mean, this woman was really an icon, and she, along with her husband, Adam Clayton Powell, were like the Jay-Z and Beyonce of the 1940s. I mean, they were just big stars.
And they were stars, and they were powerful.
Yes, they were.
Because we had political influence at the same time going on.
And, you know, she was someone who we could learn a lot from today because, you know, people who are trying to find a backbone to push back against injustice and, you know, walk straight and act with pride and dignity for our people, for ourselves. Hazel Scott was just a trailblazer in that area. And I'm so happy that we at the Women of Color Empowerment Institute were able to highlight her, to bring her to life, and to make it so she's not disappeared.
Well, we're able to bring this to our audience because of an extraordinary young filmmaker and Hazel Scott's son.
That's true. That's true. Nicole London. Nicole London was a part of a wonderful program that we put on not long ago, and she and Adam Clayton Powell III came, and we cannot wait to share and showcase them and the reason why they thought it was so important to bring this woman to life.
You will hear all about the documentary that was produced by Nicole London and Adam Clayton Powell III. Afterwards, we'll be right back.
At the Women of Color Empowerment Institute, our mission is to enhance and expand leadership by women of color. We do this in a variety of different ways, including but not limited to providing mentorship opportunities for young professionals where we assist in helping to create paths to leadership. We empower women to develop capacities for social change. We produce programs that promote heritage awareness, and we provide training opportunities for business and government. Our institute holds seminars focused on professional success techniques, and we host many other events such as our popular Advocates for Change and Leaders Connect. The Women of Color Empowerment Institute publishes a magazine called Women Lead. Our signature event is the Women of Color Empowerment Conference, a yearly conference where hundreds of leaders gather from all across the United States and beyond. To learn more about membership and how you can support our programs or be a sponsor of the Women Lead TV, visit us at nationalwomenofcolor.com. Again, that's nationalwomenofcolor.com.
The law office of Austin Pammies Norris Weeks Powell is a full-service law firm practicing in the area of governmental law, including the representation of municipalities, civil litigation, personal injury, real estate, and corporate transactional matters. With over 100 years of collective experience, our attorneys are admitted to practice before state courts, federal courts, and the United States Supreme Court. We are conveniently located in downtown Fort Lauderdale and can be reached at 954-768-9770. Or for more information about the law firm of Austin, Tammy's, Norris, Weeks, Powell, visit our website at apnwlaw.com. That's apnwlaw.com.
We're going to start with Nicole London. Just tell us a little bit about what brought you to this topic and why you wanted to share Hazel Scott with the world.
I'd been working in documentary about 20 years already. Is that right? Yeah, 20 years. I'm deceptively young looking. But, and I've been, of course, taking on more and more responsibility. So when the opportunity came to direct a film on my own, I leaped at the chance, especially to be the first person to tell the story of Hazel Scott on the big screen. And as I delved more into her story, it was just the weight, the weight of being able to tell the story, especially when we had first worked on it. It was the beginning of the pandemic, and a whole lot happened. I lost both my parents, and the project went on hiatus. But then we picked up again about 2022, I think about. And then we pushed through, and Adam's been a great, I guess you could say, almost a partner, and so open and generous with his time and the stories in his mother's archive. And so at the time, we didn't know that it would come out at the moment that it has. But we're so gratified that it has, because there's so much of an example in Hazel's story about personal responsibility, personal activism, and sisterhood that I think is so important for this moment.
Also, Karen Chilton, who wrote the book, biography of my mother, she began to write a chapter about my mother in a book that she was going to write about black female musicians. And the chapter kept getting longer and longer and longer. And finally, it became the book. And she said, well, your mother is a biographer's dream, because she has these contemporaneous notes that she took on yellow legal pads, and she kept everything, clippings, all kinds of things, which I've donated to the Library of Congress, so they're all in public. Well, by the time that years had passed and Karen finally finished the book, she said, your mother was a biographer's nightmare. There's just too much.
Well, I want to pick up on that because, Mr. Powell, Adam, these are your parents, and this is your mom. And so what is that process like when someone approaches you and says, I want to write about your mom, your parents, and what are the considerations that you have before turning over this material and kind of giving them your sign of approval?
Well, I've spent most of my career in media, and so I know what the phrase creative control means, and I didn't have it. So you have to trust the people who are going to do the work to be fair, to find a lot of things I didn't know about my parents. I worked with both the producers there was a previous documentary on PBS on American Experience about my father. I found most of the footage for that, and some of that was used in this, the Featherstone, in the barber shop, and some of the other things. So my job was to try to find the raw material, which then someone who could be trusted and who had the skill to put it together would then do it justice. And And I've been lucky, both in this film and in the one about my father, that they really, I thought, did a very, very good job, and maybe more than very good. But it was very interesting. I mean, in the course of doing research for this, Nicole and some of the researchers that worked on the film, and Karen Chilton, they were finding things that my mother hadn't saved. There was a story from Variety in the 1940s that set them on the trail to try to find some of my mother's contracts from MGM and Columbia. And the clipping was, word is beginning to leak out of Hazel Scott's contract and how much she's being paid at Columbia, and so they're going to have to increase Lena Horne's pay. And I mean, the money, I knew that we were comfortable, but I knew that my mother's hands were insured by Lloyd's of London for $1 million. That's $18 million in today's money. I remember being just tall enough to be able to look over the top of the table as my parents' accountant was doing their tax returns for 1950, I guess it was. And I was surprised. Wow, six-figure income, $1950. But they, both my mother and my father, were very careful to be, in fact, they later joked about it, said, we wanted you to have a normal childhood. Playing checkers on the floor with Quincy Jones and having the Ellington Band over for dinner, normal childhood. But the result was I didn't really see how big they were until I was about 6 or 7. And I'd gone to see, it wasn't a school, it must have been a Friday night. I was allowed to go and see one of my mother's concerts, not at Carnegie Hall, but another hall. And I knew she'd been rehearsing. One of my oldest memories, I must have been 3 years old, was trying to take a nap. And she was practicing the Schumann A piano concerto. But she's practicing the same phrase over and over and over. I'm lying there in bed saying, okay, come on. And I told her later, and she said, I had no idea that you were upstairs listening to me. And then I would sometimes just lie down under the piano while she was practicing and playing. But it was, and then of course for 3 years I was with her in Paris, which was a very different experience. And when I wasn't with her for those 3 years, I would spend summers with her in Europe and then be in the States for the school year. But again, it was, I'd come home from school and there's Lester Young sprawled out on the couch, and there's Dizzy Gillespie again, and Billie Holiday always. She came for Thanksgiving dinner. In fact, she came in July of 1959, I think it was,
Typical
and left
American
just before
family.
my birthday, and died on my birthday in New York. And we knew that. In fact, my mother said, "Don't go back there. There's nobody there to take care of you. There's nobody there to protect you." So my Aunt Billy and my Aunt Lena and Uncle Diz, that was my childhood.
Wow. Wow. As I'm listening, watching the film, I kept thinking to myself, I wonder what kind of relationship he had with his mother and his father, and what you remember as a child, and how, was there closeness? Were you closer to one than the other? Can you just talk about your own relationship with your parents?
And also what your, impression is looking back as an adult, things that you didn't, pick up on or notice at the time.
Well, interestingly, before I was 7 years old, I mainly thought of my father as a pastor. I knew him because every Sunday we knew where we were going to be. And Congress in those days only was in session from January until May because the Capitol was not air-conditioned and they wanted to leave town. And so most of the year he was in New York, and every Sunday we knew where he'd be. So the church was sort of my view of his professional and almost family home. And it wasn't, in fact, I can remember the night they let me stay up late. My father had gone to Asia, which was very odd. I mean, we'd been to Europe each year, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54. But Asia was this very exotic, far away place. My father had gone to Asia, and I knew it had something to do with global politics. A certain U.S. government agency gave him a very small camera with some very special lenses, a camera which I now have because he dropped it in salt water and thought he'd ruined it. I took it down to 14th Street and paid $5 and got it cleaned. But they gave him the camera because they wanted good pictures of Zhou Enlai, because they knew he was meeting with Zhou Enlai and with other major leaders, Nehru, others. And so he came back to New York, and at 11 o'clock there was, on the NBC News at 11 o'clock, there was an anchor named John K. McCaffrey, and he was in a very stylized delivery when people used to make fun of him. What kind of a day has it been? It's been a day that Dwight Eisenhower told the communists that he would not stand it. That kind of old-fashioned. And so the 11 o'clock news begins. What kind of a day has it been? It's been a day that Adam Clayton Powell returned to Washington to a hero's welcome. Wow, he was at the beginning of the 11 o'clock news. And that's the first time I really began to see, of course, later when I was growing up, he was not only in the news, but then I wound up being on the other side of the camera, actually covering the news.
Were you close to him? Did you have a good relationship with your father?
I'm sorry?
Did you have a good relationship with your father? Were you close to him?
Yes. There was one day when I fell into a job. I was in the right place at the right time, one of many times. And I was visiting somebody at CBS News in New York when they needed somebody right then. This was after my freshman year. Some of my MIT friends are here. And I had to call, and they said, we need somebody today, right now. And the associate director of the CBS Evening News, Freddie Stolmack, he said, who are you? And I said, well, one of the film editors said I might be able to get a summer job. Can you cut copy? I had no idea what he meant. Sure. I said, hire him. So I had to call. I didn't have to. I called my father. I said, I've got a job, a summer job at CBS News. Hello? Dad? Hello? And he said, where do you say? Where are you? I said, I'm at CBS News. And he said, well, now, you're not going to tell them what goes on, are you? Because there's a lot of things that were going on which still are not public. And then I called my mother, and she burst out laughing. Why are you laughing? She said, well, you know, we were always wondering whether you're going to be a politician like your father or in show business like your mother, and now you'll do both. But she also, the love of her life, I mean, she did the TV show in 1950 to be home with me and my father. She was really happy to have the room, Hazel's Club on 44th Street, because she could be home to be with her grandchildren.
Tell us, in terms of the filmmaking, you produced this, you directed it?
Yes.
And both? Yeah. So the question is, what did you want us to take away from the movie? What is it that you want as a message about her life? What would you like us to know?
At the beginning, it was, very easy. It would be an easier answer. It would be like, for people to know who Hazel Scott was. But as we were walking through the film, it really became, like I mentioned, the personal activism, the understanding that civil rights had been always happening, in smaller ways before, the advent of a Montgomery bus boycott. But one of the themes that I really wanted to bring forward in the film, and it's not like shouted out, but that theme of sisterhood, of black women uplifting each other, her mother, sacrificing for her. Billie Holiday kind of sacrificing for her. Say Hazel sacrificing her own career for other black women. That's the kind of like the underlining, through line throughout the film. That it's like, and then it's coming out during the election where it's like we're the only ones holding the line. So that kind of theme of black woman sisterhood and connection is like one of the main themes that I really wanted people to come away with. And I didn't think they do. It's very subtle, but it's extremely present. And I heard some acknowledgement in the audience during the screening. That part, that's right.
I want to ask you kind of how you put the film together, but I want to ask it in this context. I had heard of Hazel Scott. How many people in the room had heard of Hazel Scott before this film?
Oh, that's a good number. Okay.
She's in our Black History Month literature. I had never seen her play until I saw that film. Now, I'm before the generation of the internet, and so I had kind of learned about her from reading. I had never seen her play. I was flabbergasted by your film. She's just stunning, the genius that you have shown us. But clearly you had just a massive material to work with to tell this story. So how, as a filmmaker, did you come up with the terrifically compelling story that you did when this one was so extraordinary? There was so much. What do you do?
Well, a lot of that is informed by the archive because sometimes you just fall in love with some of the pieces you find. So there was a lot of footage from France because she'd spent such a good amount of time there. And the French are Europeans in general are incredibly meticulous about archiving their culture, their TV shows, their radio programs.
So they don't want to erase our history?
It's shocking, isn't it? So yeah, and they're, it's all incredibly well organized. So we found a whole lot of material, especially from like the late 50s and 60s onward in France. Before that was a little tougher. She had started 5 Hollywood films, and those are readily available. And it's really kind of interesting that. One of them is a Mae West film, and you don't see it that often. Why wasn't it playing on 3:00, Saturday drive-in theater on TV? Those kind of films, it just makes you think. One thing we did, at one point we had a section in the film where Hazel, we found some archival newspaper clippings that Hazel had actually been considered very strongly for the role of Sam in Casablanca. And what impact that might have had on her legacy had she been, because nobody forgets Casablanca, and that she'd been, play it again, Hazel, nobody, that kind of erasure wouldn't have been able to happen. But she did play in films that were of a time that her sections could be kind of cut as they played in the South and things like that. So, those kinds of things were really helpful in helping to shape the film because it's like tangible material that we can use to kind of, tell the story. Where we had gaps, we actually ended up using the animation that you saw.
So our mission at the Women of Color Empowerment Institute is to enhance and expand leadership by women of color. And so we do this in a variety of different ways, and we look for ways that we can impact the communities that we serve meaningfully. And looking at the work and the way that Hazel Scott maneuvered and the fights that she took on, and it just seems that they were planned and she moved with intentionality. I'm wondering what would you like audiences to take from what she did back then and apply those things to where we are right now as a country and some of the things that are happening to try to make us feel like we don't have options and we can't make change. What would you suggest in terms of what you all know and you've learned from her life?
Well, I could just say that, one, to keep telling our own stories. Nobody's going to tell our stories the same way that we can. I don't know another filmmaker that might have highlighted sisterhood the same way, or they might have dropped the story about the Hollywood fight instead and had something, maybe had Casablanca in there. You never know. So telling our own stories and passing those stories forward, but also like groups like this one, creating opportunities to share that kind of information is extremely important. Hazel herself, not playing segregated audiences, so much so that Dr. Martin Luther King sitting in an audience for the first time, sitting side by side with white patrons at the same time. You never know who's watching and who's going to be impacted by something you did, something might be considered small, and look what he was able to take in and go out and do. So you might not see the return in tangible ways or immediately, but always know that when you're trying to do good, it is impacting someone, and that could be paid forward in so many ways that you could never imagine.
That was amazing, ladies.
It was. It absolutely was. What a virtuoso. She was an artistic genius.
Right, and she had another skill. She knew how to negotiate and how to get her way and how to push an agenda forward, not just for herself, but for her community. That is extraordinary.
Absolutely, and she showed us, even in today's time, in a modern time, how to stand up for the things we believe in, how to put justice first, and how to just walk in dignity.
And there's a cost, but she showed courage. She was willing to pay it.
And sometimes we pay it even today, but I think that she is the type of woman who tells us all that there's a larger issue, there's a greater good, and to just stay focused on that. And that's exactly what we do at the Women of Color Empowerment Institute. We keep on moving, and we do it with dignity and respect for others. And so, ladies, until the next time,
Be empowered.